I'm Guy Sakalakis at AttorneySync, and I really enjoy peace lilies.
Peace lilies. I'm Jeff Bertman at Head of Growth at AttorneySync, and I play racquetball 3 times a week.
3 times a week. That is an avid racquetball habit.
Avid. I was going to use that word myself here. It's about my upper limits with my mid-40s body before things start to hurt.
Yeah, I would say that's an aggressive activity for a mid to late 40-year-old, but that's just my opinion.
It's a step down from basketball, which I've since retired from since 3 of my buddies blew out their knees inside of a year. And I did not want to go down that path, so slightly less risk with racquetball knee blowouts.
Very wise. Today, we are going to talk about some recent calls you've had with lawyers that have tended to be on the smaller side of the market. And a couple things that I think would be valuable for people to hear more about is what we tend to recommend when someone comes in as a smaller firm. And I'll start off with maybe the confession that I've always thought that agency services really start to maximize their value when you have sufficient budget, data, resource deployment. Because what we really do is we apply our expertise to the firm's business. And the more data that we have to make decisions and to benchmark and to hold ourselves accountable, the better we do. And a lot of times firms come in and say, hey, look, you guys seem like you really know what you're talking about. We want to make a bigger investment into marketing. And so tell us what you can do for us. And so let's start there. That's how it starts. And we tend to start with the exploration of getting a sense of what size the firm is. Maybe that's in terms of top line fees. Maybe it's in terms of number of attorneys or office locations. But let's face it, the majority of firms, I think if you go and look at the statistics overall, whether you go to the ABA or some other industry statistics sites on law firms, the overwhelming majority of them are small firms. A lot of folks, they go out, they hang their own shingle, or maybe they've been in business for a couple of years, but they're really focused on practicing, and it supports their, we'll call it a quote unquote lifestyle, even though I've never really loved the term lifestyle business, but for a lot of these firms, that's what it is. And what do you tell these folks? Where do you start to guide folks that come in and they're saying, say we're in I'm sub $1 million a year in revenue. What types of things is the AttorneySync point of view on what they should be doing from a marketing standpoint?
It's a good question. One of the things I try to do up front is suss out where they're at in the life cycle of the firm as well. In other words, a couple of the firms I recently talked to, new firms. So they were just starting out. They didn't have a large volume of clients coming in. So there was a need for some immediacy in terms of what can I do to generate some leads and result in case assigned and cash flow now, which might be a little different from a solo that has some established referrals and marketing going on where there's something coming in and are looking to grow a little bit from there.
So let's pause there. So if a firm comes in, they're like, look, we're startup mode. Are the firms you talked to recently, or the ones that you were referencing here, do they have marketing budget? Do they have runway? Do they have capital? How are they thinking about funding their marketing?
For the ones that I talked to, a couple of them were at very beginning stages where they needed a website, right? And I said, you should invest in getting that home base, right? Even if you get referrals right now, there's going to be people that are looking up you by name, by your brand. What do they see? So think reputation management. Think online brochure. Even if this isn't a site that's pumping in all this top of the funnel traffic yet, you still need a presence so that they can see you are who you are and you're presenting yourself as professional. So I think that's table stakes to begin with. With some of these firms, the recommendation that I was making up front was, I think you should be investing in things that are going to produce leads in the short term so that you have enough capital to actually invest in something that's going to produce longer term from that. So In this case, we were talking a little bit about something like local service ads up front. You should be testing that out. The way that I talk about that is that your risk is somewhat mitigated with that kind of ad unit, right? Because you're only paying when someone actually reaches out or converts from that and gives you good local visibility. So it was something to start out with. One of the things that came about with this is that you got to be careful with how much, if you have a smaller budget up front, you're paying the agency to just do stuff that might pay off further down the road, even if these are best practice type of activities, and balance that with a need for the dollars that I'm spending to actually produce something for the firm in the short run. And I think this is where some people get lost, right? They'll be coming in saying, hey, brand new firm looking for help with an SEO campaign. And I try to dig into what are your needs short term with this. And we get to, this doesn't make sense to keep investing in when nothing's going to come out of it for 12 or 18 months down the road. I think you got to think hard about the type of strategies and what you're deploying up front with what usually is limited capital, but a little bit more time available in terms of what they can spend on it.
So for the firms you talked to that we're thinking about today, talk to me about practice areas and locations.
A mix. So in terms of some of the practice areas, I talked to a criminal firm, an estate planning firm, and a family law firm. Mid-sized markets, nothing in terms of like huge top cities, major competitive cities, things like that. And in almost every case, they came in asking about some medium to long-term strategy. And through the conversation, I was able to distill that they needed leads in a much shorter time frame than what some of those long-term strategies are going to produce. And I think, I'm not sure where it comes from. I'd be curious kind of your take on that too, but it seems to be a common pitfall that the firms will fall into at this size where they're chasing a specific channel instead of thinking about what are the outcomes I'm looking for, and or like what does my budget look like in terms of what I can allocate towards this. But they're not thinking about like the outcomes and end results so much as they're concentrated on, can I get an agency to help me with this one specific type of marketing?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm often critical of agencies. You know, the classic paradigm is that whatever it is that the agency sells, that becomes the most important thing. And I think there's a couple of things to think about. First is that when a firm contacts AttorneySync, like when you're talking to them, you know, there's a big question is like, how did they even come to you, or how do they come to us? And look, someone listens to Lunch Hour Legal Marketing. I would hope that someone who's a regular listener to Lunch Hour Legal Marketing that eventually contacts AttorneySync has a good sense of all the things that you said, because Conrad and I are always trying to talk about outcomes and outcomes in the context of timeline and growth cycle and all this kind of stuff, and really try to avoid, you know, quote unquote, pitching or pigeonholing folks into a particular channel. That said, though, that people that get, whether it's Lunch Hour Legal Marketing or word of mouth referral or whatever, they're coming to a digital marketing agency. And so they already come with a bunch of preconceived notions about what digital legal marketing agencies do. What do we think of with digital legal marketing agencies? They build websites, they do SEO, they sell pay-per-click ads, they manage ads, maybe there's some other reputation management stuff. And so they come to the they're coming to the conversation with this preconceived notion. And I think that's why they're like, hey, I'm here to shop SEO services. So of course I expect you to pitch me on SEO. I'm looking for SEO. So it's like a circular kind of reasoning, in my opinion. I think the second thing too, and I think this is something that we talk about a lot, and I think it behooves us and agencies in general to be cognizant of, is what really are their needs, even beyond the service offerings that we offer. People call us and there's an expectation of, hey, we want to talk about whether there's an opportunity. The whole point of them calling us is to explore whether we're the right fit for their marketing objectives. That's what I always say. And every email that we do handoffs on, it's always about exploring whether we're the right fit for the marketing objectives. And a couple of things about that are, first of all, are, to your point, is what are their marketing objectives? Do they have them? And one of the things AttorneySync can do is help you establish marketing objectives in the context of where you are in your growth, in your budget, in your whatever metrics you want to use to benchmark. We can give you guidance on what we think you should be investing in. Now, for this particular segment of the market, the sub-$1 million firm, The thing that I'm always curious about is what else are you doing to market your firm aside from calling a marketing agency? Because so many of these stories go like this. Either I'm a solo practitioner, maybe I've got a couple lawyers at the firm. And just to keep it real here, are the firms that you recently talked to that are small, do they have any in-house marketing resources?
Most were by themselves or a paralegal, but
Yeah.
thin.
Classic persona. Maybe we'll stick to 2 lawyers and a paralegal, maybe, or a lawyer and 2 paralegals. I think that's a more common paradigm, maybe even a more healthier paradigm, but that's a conversation for a different day. So they don't have any full dedicated in-house marketing people. So my questions are, what are you currently doing? And I'd like to couch that in terms of time and money. So my biggest issue is the firm comes in and they're like, look, we're sub $1 million. It's me and my partner, 2 paralegals or whatever, combination of paralegals. And we're not doing anything. It's pure work. We just work cases. Like that's what we do. Our paralegal maybe sends out an email once in a while, or we have some automated, like maybe we send out holiday cards. And when those firms are contacting a marketing agency, I'm all immediately in red flag land, because I'm like, there are a bunch of things that you should be thinking about doing before hiring your classic quote unquote marketing agency. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's lots of ways and lots of services that marketing agencies can help support beyond those general channels. I know that there are agencies that can support on direct mail. Charlie Mann's new business, Kraken, can support on email campaigns, which I think is a great service offering. There are agencies that focus on more quote unquote classic business development and referral generation. Those are the types of things that I would be starting with. If you're a brand new firm, have you gone out and told everybody that you know what you're doing? Have you told them that you started a new firm, where you're located, who you help, how you help them, why you think you're uniquely qualified?
Totally. Have you shake the trees? Yep.
Shake the trees. And a lot of times, have you done that? No. Guess what? It's not time to go open up a paid search campaign on Google quite yet, especially you have no fees coming in. And this is another thing that we talked about this. I'll give a shout to Tanner at ConsultWebs. We talked about this at the ABA Tech Show when we presented together last time. And I had thrown this out, and I've been using this to simplify things. Don't take this word as gospel here, but I think if you're in the startup mode, 80% of your marketing resources, including both time and money, should be going toward some form of, to your point, immediate, direct style referrals. Maybe it's ads if you've got some runway, but you need that short-term stuff. And then 20% is your longer term. But I always say, this is the other mistake folks make, is they get persuaded. They're desperate. Desperate's maybe strong. I think some firms are desperate, but that's not really the category I'm describing here. You just started your new business. You want to get off the ground, and you start thinking about things like SEO and brand building. Those are longer term, but you should be planting the seeds on those things. Like you've made this point at the beginning, where it's like, whether it's a website that's a brochure, so when people search on your name, they have some destination to find information about you. I always think Google Business Profile as well as like a table stakes. Right. It's free, start off the bat. But 80% should be going to those short-term, intermediate turnaround investments. But the part that everybody thinks about is everybody goes to ads. They're like, oh yeah, I can run ads. And search ads, historically, even though they're expensive now, even LSAs, they've got high intent. The non-brand ones are bottom of the funnel. And so speed, they can deliver, you're paying a premium, but they can deliver on speed. Now, and then the other, especially in PI, I know you mentioned criminal defense, but I think about this in PI, maybe not so true in other contexts. Most PI lawyers that are doing lawyer-to-lawyer referrals, depending on what market, you're in 30 to 50% referral fee land. And so and I encourage you to build relationships with lawyers who can refer you cases. I think that's a cornerstone of any good practice. But just think, your cost of acquisition of those cases is 1, the referral fee, because you got to pay that no matter what. So that could be 30 to 50% of the total fee. 2, it's whatever you're spending time and money wise to invest in those referral relationships. Now, again, I think about if I'm brand new, I'm going and finding other professionals, also professionals outside of the context of law, but also other lawyers, taking them to dinner, taking them to coffee, taking them out for drinks, get to know them. Because guess what? They're another place that you want them to know that you're out in the world doing your thing and why you're doing your thing and who you're helping and what kind of cases you're looking for that you think you're competent to help with. But if you're not doing any of that stuff, it's not time for sign up for SEO and PPC and invest in data infrastructure so that you can make data informed. Everybody talks about these data. We talk about it all the time. Data informed decision making. It's a data scarcity problem. You don't have any data. You're brand new, and you don't have the money. So your investment is time. And so again, for me, I'm like, go take folks to dinner. Get involved with local organizations, lean into whatever it is. Yeah, it's funny too, because people ask me about this, the local stuff. And I always think of cycling. I'm not even a big bicycling person, but I always think about these cycling communities. I think they're tight-knit communities. They're very localized. If you're into cycling, go get active in the cycling community. Maybe you sponsor cycling events, whatever it is that you're into. Yeah, those are the first places. Now, again, agencies, including AttorneySync, part of what we do is to help you figure out what sponsorships might make sense, connecting the dots between, hey, you're passionate about this thing. It's a good source of referrals for you. It's good visibility in this community. And maybe there's some digital aspects to that, right? So maybe there are private social groups or subreddits or whatever that we can help you research to become active on or potentially advertise on. But those are the things I think about when I think about it. And they tend to be not as expensive. Maybe it's a couple $100.
Because it's more, sometimes when I'm talking to someone that's newer, and I'll explain to the point you're making, initially you've got these resources, the bucket of money and the bucket of time. And if you have less of a caseload, you've got some more time. And these are the types of things and activities you should be investing that in. Eventually that starts to flip, right? Where now I've got extra money I can invest, but a lot less time. And that's when an agency can really be a difference maker for you, when you can invest properly into doing that. But when that's not the case, especially initially or when you're smaller, utilize that time. Just direct it towards the activities that are going to be the types of things that you were just talking about, for sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's why too, when I think about these new, whether they're newer, they're in startup mode, or maybe they're a little bit further down the path, but they just haven't, hit their growth objectives or don't really know what their growth objectives are. I keep coming back to the same thing, which is, and the point that you're making is that if you got to figure out what your role in the business is going to be too, because if you love practicing law, like you went to law school, you're a trial warrior, you love serving clients and practicing law, then you need to be thinking about who is at your business is going to be the person to help it grow. Maybe your paralegal has some of these skills. Unfortunately, I think a lot of lawyers make a hire, whether it's a paralegal or office support person, or even they hire a marketing person and then they load up their plate with a bunch of other stuff. They're not realistic about the capacity and the skill set and whether that person even wants to do that kind of work at the firm. Yeah. And they just push all that work on them, right? So it's hire the paralegal and they're like, oh, paralegal, listen to lunch hour legal marketing and then go do all the marketing from the firm too. That's not fair either. But my point is that you got to decide your role, because if you're going to be the lawyer, the paralegal is going to be the paralegal, then you should be thinking about either partnering with a lawyer who really wants to do the marketing side of things, which I think it can be a great relationship, or you've got to get into, I got to hire an in-house marketing person, and I'm not going to ask that person to do all this other stuff. They're just going to focus on marketing. But
marketing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm curious your take, only because this reminded me that came up from a conversation last week. Newer firm, she was grinding, right? And she was able to offer at this time several different practice areas, which are very different, right? I think it was estate planning. She did some criminal work. She did some PI work, and came asking, hey, want to market the firm, want to generate some business, and was not really committed to any one of those. I understand why a firm might need to do this up front. They have several different types of cases, et cetera, and can work and take the people that'll pay them up front. What is your take from a marketing perspective when that's the kind of firm up front? Should they be focused from a marketing or advertising perspective on one of those practice areas? Should you be trying to grow it across all of them? What do you think about a situation like that?
As I am a disciple of David C. Baker, and I think positioning is really important in legal. And, without knowing it a lot, there's some other questions I might ask. I might ask about the community that they're serving, because there are some communities that are just so underserved by lawyers in general that being a generalist or a multi-practice firm can make sense. But I would say, I'm making up number, 80% of the firms would do better to pick one practice area. And I would even say go even more specific than that and think of a segment of that particular practice area, whether that's a demographic segment or something else. And I would encourage folks to read the David C. Baker book, Business of Expertise. He talks about both horizontal and vertical positioning. But I think finding that sweet spot so that when people think of you, they know specifically what you do and why you're uniquely qualified to do that thing for that particular segment of the market. The net on, because you're going to lose out. Some people are going to be like, oh, I have a criminal case, but I don't think of, if you're the PI firm, they don't think of you as the PI lawyer, even if you could do that stuff. The net, though, on the benefits of that, from a positioning standpoint, lawyers call it niching down, or people flipping it to niching up, or I can't remember who it was, flipped it on its head. I think there's a tremendous amount of value to that. And it's particularly true in digital, because some of the most obvious examples are like Google Business Profile. Like, you get one primary category. The same thing at Google. Google's going to, if the content on your site is more tightly relevant around a particular topic, you're going to tend to do better. But I think most importantly, in the minds of your audience, you want them to remember you for one specific thing, because here's what happens. And we hear this all the time.
And to be able to speak to their problems, right?
Speak to their problems, speak in their language. It demonstrates, it's easier to demonstrate your expertise when you're laser focused on that. But the biggest thing that we hear over and over again is lawyers will say, I'm a pretty good lawyer. I really put client experience first. I've gotten some great results from my clients. My former clients love me. I've got a great reputation. And I'll be like, are they referring to you? And they're like, no. And I'm like, why don't you call someone up and ask them what it is that they think you do? And so many times their former client is, oh yeah, I totally forgot about you. And I totally forgot it is what you do. And it's even crazier than that, because sometimes I'll tell lawyers, I'll be like, go ask your family members what it is that they think you do. Like, I know you're a lawyer, but what kind of cases do I work? I don't know. And so again, I think that the more general you are, the more people are going to associate you as like a lawyer. I have my own experience. I've been practiced law in, almost 20 years now. And people that I've known my whole life that follow some of my roommates and stuff, I would ask you, if I ask them, like, what kind of law did I practice? Like, they know I'm a lawyer, and they're texting me about their DUI case. And I'm like, I never practiced DUI, my friend.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that's for that particular instance, and really in general, I think it's rare that I'm like, oh no, you're in a situation where taking a more generalist approach is good. Now, the other thing you can do is, if you have two different lawyers that are marketing themselves as their individual practice, but they're under the same roof, especially if they are complementary type of legal services, I think that can be like, the most obvious one are lawyers that provide services to businesses, right? So maybe you've got a tax lawyer, and maybe you've got a trademark lawyer and other business services lawyer. I think that but you're still under this business umbrella, but I would even niche down in as a practitioner level a little bit deeper. So positioning always wins the day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I articulated as well. I think it's one thing to have some pages on your site, perhaps, that articulate for referral something that you can handle this. But I think the stuff that resonates is when you're speaking directly to your audience about their problems and how you can help them solve their problems. And that's really difficult to do if you're trying to do it across someone that's getting a divorce or just got arrested or got hurt have a very different sets of problems, and trying to speak to them all at once, you're speaking to no one, right? So definitely on the same page in terms of drilling down from a niche perspective.
Yeah, I really like this part of the conversation that relates to the short term, because it's always that. It's always if you're a smaller firm, you're like, I need to get cases in the door today, and what types of things can you do? And to me, again, it is much more about being social, being active in your local community, getting the word out about what you do, because the cornerstone should be referrals. It's staying in touch. That's the other thing too, that every time I'll be like, what are you doing to stay in touch with former clients? Why would I do that? That's why they're not referring to you. They don't even remember you. People are living their lives. They're not sitting around waiting to try to send you a case. And so unless your agency does this stuff, I wouldn't, before I start spending money on Facebook and YouTube ads and all this other stuff, I'd make sure that I've got that locked down. The other thing that I would make sure I have locked down before I start signing up for an agency, and we see this all the time, is your intake. Who's doing intake? Oh, I'm handling intake.
Just talked about that. Who's answering the phones? How are you tracking those things? If you pour a bunch of gas into it, none of your systems are set up, you're going to pay a lot of money for a bunch of leads to fall on the floor and have bad experiences with the firm and get all the way up to negative reviews left of nobody answered and never helped me. So you got to have some of that stuff tightened up before you're starting to spend money.
Yeah. And lawyers will say, I answer the phone. I answer the phone every single time really at midnight when you're in court,
right.
When you're at lunch.
You're in court.
Oh, they'll leave me a voice message. Really? Yeah. Maybe if someone's referred to you by a close personal friend, maybe they will, but someone that sees a Facebook ad, they're not waiting around to leave you a voice message. They're calling the next lawyer.
That's exactly right.
So what else? What are some of the other issues or what are some of the other ideas that we have for some of these startup, smaller, no budget firms? What should they be doing? What are you telling them to do?
Talk a little bit about maybe some of the community involvement stuff. I know we were talking earlier today about some cool examples of ways that firms were involving and utilizing some different kinds of community events for email signups to stay top of mind. These are not necessarily things that are crazy expensive, but involve time and effort and investment into participating in things that people care about very locally in the community. But those can be great ways to generate some additional awareness and referrals and those types of results.
Yeah. This stuff is like not that hard to me. You get out in your local community, you find other business owners, maybe it's restaurant owners, and you do some co-marketed campaigns with them. Maybe if the local chamber of commerce in your area is active, get involved in the local chamber of commerce, because you're going to get to know business owners. And these business owners, they tend to be leaders in the community. People tend to know who they are. Obviously, it depends on your community, but go make friends with them. Take them out for dinner. That's why I'm always like, if you're like, I've got $1,000 a month to spend on marketing, and it's all I've got. The last place I'm going to tell you to go spend money is on digital ads. I would go tell you to go take people to dinner. Take people to dinner.
Take to dinner and buy a gift for a referral, even if they didn't actually sign up with you. I think those things will go way further than buying a search ad.
Yeah, or if you want to get creative, sponsor something. Like, I got $1,000 to send a family to dinner at this. Have a contest. Maybe you give away, like you have a thing to sign up to do a giveaway or a contest, and then celebrate again. Get everybody's permission and do all the terms and compliance stuff the right way. But use that vehicle to help people get the word out about that. Hey, you're supporting the local community. Again, so much of this comes back to what you're into. It sounds silly, and I'm empathetic because a lot of people you start to, your identity becomes caught up in your work. So it's, what are you into? I'm into practicing law. That's what I do. I'm a lawyer. And it's like, okay, that might be your thing, but can you dig a little deeper? Is there something else that you care about? Maybe you've got kids that are in youth sports. Maybe there's
hobbies. Think of hobbies.
Yeah. What are your hobbies? I don't have time for hobbies. Maybe you should make some hobbies. Make some time for your hobbies is step number one. I can't make time for hobbies because I don't have any money because I'm working all the time. And find a place where those hobbies interact with professional development. But those are some of the things that I've seen work all the time. Is the local community stuff where you're thinking about it. I'm just going to use my own community. There's a town fair. Be visible at the town fair. There are a bunch of local restaurants. Get to know the people at the restaurants. Strike up conversations with people. So much of that basic marketing stuff. Marketing is about communicating the value of your service. If you're not talking, if you're not communicating, and you don't know how to talk about the value of what you do, well, don't be surprised that nobody else knows about it because you're not willing to talk to anybody.
And further enforces the need for that niche to be able to really succinctly say, this is what I do, and this is the kind of person that I can help. That'll be more easily communicated and remembered by other people that you're dealing with.
Or get other people talking. If it's not your thing, because I know a lot of lawyers, not my thing. I'm not social. My life is my work. That's what I do. Cool. That's great. Then you got to find ways to motivate other people to sing your praises. And again, maybe that's former clients, maybe that's colleagues, maybe that's other business professionals that you have a personal relationship with. Maybe you do something, maybe it's good community service work that you do. Maybe there's an organization that you volunteer at, or maybe it's as simple as you're charitable and you want to highlight that, but get other people talking about the good work you're doing in the community. If you don't have those things in place first, I would say it's not time to hire an agency. Now, if you've got that stuff in, sure, agencies can do all sorts of awesome stuff to help spread the word of that. They can do media buys. One of the ones that I love is on LinkedIn. You can do very targeted media buys for whether you want to show ads to other business professionals. Maybe you want to have a campaign that talks about how you support your audience and get that message out to CPAs or therapists or whatever category it is that you want to target in your market. That can be really an effective way to partner with an agency, but it's that underlying work that you've already done in terms of messaging and community work that then the agency can help spread the word. And don't get me wrong, AttorneySync, other agencies, they can help you with the messaging standpoint. They can help you identify the opportunities for sponsorships. But at the end of the day, it's really, not to get too metaphysical about this, but it's part of this is a journey of self-exploration about who you are, what you're into, what communities you want to serve, what your story is, why you do what you do. Because once the agency has that stuff, they can start to craft messages, ads, creative, contests, co-marketing, partnerships, webinars, white papers, email campaigns, whatever else it is. But they got to have that core stuff underneath.
That kernel, that asset to be able to do all that with is key.
What else? Anything else we can tell these small startup firms why they shouldn't hire us?
The only other thing that came up that I tried to be honest with is you don't want to undercapitalize the campaign, which I've talked about before. But the idea is don't spend what you have, which may not be enough to truly make it in a channel, and just hope for the best, because you're just wasting the money, right? You're just setting it on fire. So in that case, to the point you made a little earlier, you're better off spending on that on a meal or something local in the community than you are just trying to feel like you're doing well because I'm doing a little bit of SEO or doing a little bit of paid, but I'm not spending nearly enough to actually have it work. Don't fall into that trap.
Yeah, 100%. And the other trap that I would say, this is the hard one, but there's no shortage of businesses that will sell you their thing at a low cost.
I had this exact conversation with the person I advised this to last week.
And so I would be very skeptical and suspicious of people that are promising you double your firm revenue for $1,000 a month, whatever it is. Sometimes it takes the form of coaching. Sometimes it takes the form of consulting. Sometimes, right now, the hotness is AI. So $1,000 a month, and we'll AI your firm to
ranked in AI,
massive success. Those types of things, I needless to say, tend not to work so well. And again, if you're interested in exploring something like that, like you think you've got something that might actually be the promise is good, have them put it in writing that they guarantee it, right? And define it in business metrics. You guarantee that your proprietary AI system is going to generate me X number of cases at a cost per case, or X number of qualified leads at a target cost per qualified lead. And again, qualified leads here, we're talking about the attorney or the firm, whoever's doing the qualification take is saying, this is a lead that we want, not a pixel fire, not our AI sussed out that this is a qualified lead for you because they said some of these magic words. Like, that's not a qualified lead. A qualified lead is somebody that you actually want to sign up for a case. Look, I'm always, and we talk about this all the time, like, there's new stuff all the time, and you should test it. Some of your budget should be dedicated to research and development in the marketing context. You got to try some of these things. We do the same thing so that we can help vet some of this stuff so we can make informed recommendations to our clients about it. But let me just, not surprisingly, 99 out of 100 times, it's trash. It's either they're overpromising, they're doing something unethical, or they're doing something that's long-term going to be a liability. Fake, we can count, let me count the ways. Fake reviews, manipulative lead generation strategies, runners, people that are sending out, they're doing solicitation. There's no shortage of that kind of stuff. And
if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
It's weird how that's still a thing after all this time.
Occam's razor.
Is that what Occam's razor is? I think that's the
simplest explanation.
Yes. Which I guess
maybe it's not Occam's razor.
Still applies. Still applies.
I stand by my statement.
Very good. All right. Good talk.
Good stuff.